All right, brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. We're on to the final session of our 3-day session. We'll have the closing after this, but the actual final session for the meeting. I'm so glad to have the opportunity to be able to introduce you to the donors of the Global Programme. I think many of you have lots of opportunities to be able to see myself, to see South Africa, and many others of the many other members of the Global Programme. But behind us and what makes all of this possible is our donors. And so we thought it would be a good idea for you to be able to meet them, to talk to them, and to be able to hear from them about why they're supporting the Global Programme, what their priorities are. We know many of you are not only receiving support from them through the Global Programme, but also have bilateral agreements within your countries as well. So this is an opportunity to be able to engage with them, to talk to them. And one of the things that we just noticed while we're in the chat room that is that they're all women, a powerful group of women. So really glad to also be able to have that and to be able to share that with you. So some of them have been able to join us today and some have not been able to join. But despite that, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that this program is supported by the governments of Belgium, Canada, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, the United Kingdom, European Union, and Zonte International. So really important that you're able to get a full sense of everyone who is behind us and has been supporting us all the way back from 2016 until today. So let me start off with the first question, which I'd like to present to Kathleen. Kathleen is the Director for Education, Gender-Based Violence and Child Protection at Global Affairs Canada, where she leads a team responsible for international assistance, policy, global engagement, and programming, supporting quality education, eliminating GBV and harmful practices, and also ending violence against children. Hello, Kathleen, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Nankali. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, Kathleen, congratulations on Canada's Feminist International Assistance Policy and the measures that you've been taking to address gender equality worldwide. You're leading by action and not just words. At the opening ceremony of the Generation Equality Forum that recently completed, we saw the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announce nearly 180 million to advance gender equality around the world. With 8 years to 2030, how will Canada use this policy and investment to continue its work towards eliminating the target of child marriage?
Oh, thanks for the question, Nankali, and for having me here with the other donors. It really, I just want to say, you know, hearing you list all those donors, I think what's really special about the Global Program is that we've all come together around a common priority. So I think that's a really important thing. Many of you probably know that Canada launched the Feminist International Assistance Policy in 2017. So that was 4 or 5 years ago. And I think we're really now starting to see the impact that a feminist approach has, not only on what issues we prioritize, but also on how we address them. And so when you ask, you know, looking forward to the next 8 years, I think I have to look a bit back at what we've accomplished, because I think that's where the proof lies. So with this policy, we've been focusing explicitly on structural barriers to gender inequality, whether that is the uneven burden of paid and unpaid care, which was a significant part of that announcement at the Generation Equality Forum, sexual and reproductive health and rights, the barriers that keep girls, especially adolescent girls, from staying in school and completing their education, especially in conflict and crisis and humanitarian situations. It means support for women's rights organizations, and very relevant, of course, to this session, eliminating all forms of sexual and gender-based violence and harmful practices such as child early and forced marriage. So what I want to highlight today are a few things that I've seen emerge or change from within my work on ending CFM since we launched the FIAP. So the first is that within our international assistance, we now have a very explicit focus on human rights, on intersectionality, and on diversity and inclusion. And these are all an evolving practice for us under the FIAP. As we grow with the FIAP, we grow and deepen in these issues. And since the launch of the policy, we've been really at the forefront of championing support for women's rights organizations. So that started with Women's Voice and Leadership Program in 2017. Then there was the Equality Fund announced in 2019. And now as the co-lead of the Feminist Movement's Action Coalition, along with a bunch of other partners, we're launching a new global alliance for sustainable feminist movements as a part of that Action Coalition. So we've really focused on participation and voice. And you guys may recall when Canada hosted the G7 presidency, and I know I spoke about this at the Girls Not Brides Global meeting, we brought 6 young women to participate in the ministerial dialogue with development ministers and released the Whistler Declaration on unlocking the potential of adolescent girls for sustainable development. Last February, we launched the Together for Learning campaign, a 3-year campaign that's aimed at ensuring that refugee, other forcibly displaced, and host community children and youth can get a quality education. And when we did that, we created the Refugee Education Council in collaboration with our Canadian civil society partners, hosted by World Vision Canada. And this group of 15 young women and men who are teachers, parents, students from all around the world who've experienced displacement are helping to shape the priorities and the actions under this campaign. And I just want to flag one person, for example, in that, who is a wonderful woman named Starlin Abdi. She's a young mother, she's a human rights advocate, a photographer, but she is driven by her desire to ensure that her daughters can complete their education and choose if and when they marry. And so child marriage has become, such an important part of these dialogues. And when we listen to young women, when we listen to girls, what we hear about a lot are wanting to choose when to marry, wanting to have an education. And so we're really responding to those voices. I think the final thing I'd like to say is that, and this is really relevant to moving towards those 8 years, is that the policy makes a difference in terms of programming. We included sexual and gender-based violence as a targeted pathway in the gender equality action area, but we also made it cross-cutting to other action areas in the policy. So what it's meant is that we've had a significant increase in our investments to prevent and respond to all forms of SGBV. And that includes targeted investments on ending child early and forced marriage, such as funding that we've given to our civil society partners, Girls Not Brides, Tostan, Oxfam Canada, Plan Canada International, Save the Children, Care Canada, just to name a few of them. But it also includes the $30 million in funding that we've given to the global program, including the $10 million we announced in June at the Generation Equality Forum, which was additional emergency funding to address the impacts of COVID-19, impacts that are really threatening to set us back. And the programming that we're doing it's really comprehensive. It's supporting grassroots action and social norm change, service delivery, health, education, child protection, and it's supporting the implementation of the national and multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder plans. Now, our feminist approach has also meant that we've included child marriage and CEFM as a priority in our sectoral investments. So that includes the $400 million that we announced for the Charlevoix Education Initiative in 2018, and the commitment announced at Women Deliver to reach $700 million of funding per year by 2023-24 on sexual and reproductive health and rights. And I think this is really important in terms of how we've been able to grow both our investment, but I think our impact in terms of the work that we're doing to support girls. So lastly, I just want to note that it's also influenced our COVID-19 response, because we not only focused on providing significant resources to address the health impacts, but we also made it a priority to support programming to address secondary impacts. And those included SGBV, SRHR, education, food security, gender inequality, and particularly the position that women's rights organizations were finding themselves in, and paid and unpaid care. So going back to the question, I would just say, I think what we've done up to now is the way forward in the next 8 years. Promoting human rights, ensuring that diverse girls, women, boys, and men can have a voice and meaningfully participate in shaping the agenda, and then investing with a range of partners to ensure a comprehensive approach is used to tackle a complex problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Learning so much more. I realize now that I was only aware of a certain part of Canada's investments in this area, but there's so much more that's going on and so much more that we're grateful for. I'm picking up, especially the point about investment in secondary impacts of COVID. I think many of us were under this illusion that COVID was something in 2020, and by December 2020, it would all come to an end. But, as the world evolves, we're continuing to feel those secondary impacts and having donors like yourself, invest in the secondary impacts is really important to ensure that we stay on track towards achieving that elimination goal. So thank you so much for that, Kathleen. Patricia, I'd like to move on to you. Patricia Pennetier joined the Gender Equality, Human Rights and Democratic Governance Unit of the EU Directorate General for International Partnerships in September 2019. She's a program manager for child rights and anti-discrimination and was involved in the preparation of EU strategies on the rights of the child. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you, Nankali.
Okay. So my question for you today is that the European Union and the United Nations have embarked on the global multi-year initiative focused on elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls, the Spotlight Initiative, quite rightly named, which includes eliminating harmful practices like child marriage. We've seen this initiative champion leadership of feminist organizations, especially within Africa. Can you tell us what role you see for feminist organizations in addressing elimination of child marriage? Over to you, Patricia.
Yes, thank you very much, Nankali, and thank you, UNICEF, for having invited the European Union to this event and to this panel in particular. It's always very instructive to hear from experts, and for us as donors also to have the opportunity to share our vision and to share what we are doing to push forward the agenda on the elimination of child marriage. Women's rights movements have been critical indeed in advancing multiple women's rights issues around the world, and the elimination of harmful practices, especially child marriage, is an integral part of this struggle. Now, about the added value of women's rights organizations and their role in the work towards ending child marriage in particular, we know that the main challenge is gender inequality, and that the key answer is gender social norms transformation. Child marriage is one expression of gender inequality rooted in cultural norms that devalue women and girls. But transforming social norms requires a solid context-specific knowledge and better evidence based on the child marriage. And this is where the role of women's rights organizations comes into its own. They are in the best position to know the root causes of the phenomenon and to influence the abandonment of the scourge, because often their members are confronted daily with the perverse effects of harmful practices and patriarchal barriers. Hence their ability to advocate against child marriage and to provide specific guidance to government on advancing necessary legal frameworks to stop the continuation of harmful attitudes and help with their concrete implementation at all levels. Of course, their influence does not stand alone and is combined with the influence of other factors. But it's often the most powerful and where real momentum can be generated on these issues. And just to demonstrate that, I would like to mention two examples. One example, and a very important one example, is the collective action and advocacy by women's rights movements, which helped put child marriage on the global development agenda and led to a target on child marriage being included in the SDGs. And then there is also the example of many countries where the governments have decided to raise the legal age of marriage for girls, or to ban child marriage. And it was done thanks to the efforts of the women's rights movement in these countries, which worked tirelessly with community leaders and decision makers to establish policies to address child marriage. And this is why the European Union has mobilized to promote the role and strengthen the capacities of these women's movements, both politically and financially. At the policy level, the EU has developed a whole range of commitments to civil society development and has taken a stand against gender-based violence, in particular at the Generation Equality Forum. But here I would like to refer specifically to the transformative approach of the EU Gender Action Plan, which was approved last year. And So the approach of the EU Gender Action Plan insists on the support for women's rights organizations to bring about change. And one of the EU targets in these plans is to increase funding to women's rights organizations to contribute to gender equality. And I think it shows very well how much the EU considers the great influence of women's organizations in ending GBV. Actually, the European Union is already supporting women's rights organizations to strengthen their influence and make progress, notably through the Spotlight Initiative, both at country and regional level in Africa. And one of the focus of the joint program for the elimination of child marriage, which is financed under this initiative, is the building of regional and continent-wide women's movement to collectively advocate and work towards the ending of gender-based violence. And also to enlarge the space in key regional processes with the African Union. Finally, I would just like to say that support for this feminist movement, while absolutely crucial, must be, of course, combined with the participation of other actors. The experience has shown that the key to success is working through diversity, partnership, and collective action. And I think that it's even more the case now with the consequences of the pandemic. And to do this, the participation and support to CSOs, girls, boys, men, parents, community, and religious leaders, governments, media, is just as critical. So this is how I see the role of the women's rights organizations. And if you have any questions about what the European Union is doing, I would be very happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Really appreciate you sharing that with us. I think it's becoming clearer and clearer, and there's more and more investments in women-led organizations, feminist organizations, believing that they're the key drivers. And I know certainly coming from Tanzania, when I go down to community level, it's women who come to the forefront on addressing these issues. And so it's so great to see, increasing recognition of the leadership that they're taking and the impact of the programs that they have out there. So really appreciate that. And we will come back to you with questions from the floor. To all participants, please feel free to put in your questions into the chat box. We'll have an opportunity to come back to our partners and engage on that. So the next question goes to you, Sharon. How are you, Sharon?
Fine, thank you.
Good. Colleagues, Sharon is the president of Zonte International. Dr. Langenbach retired in 2018 from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where she held both line and project management positions. While section manager for mechanical engineering, she managed over 200 mechanical engineers designing and developing space flight hardware, and was responsible for all technical cost and schedule performance of the section's business. I think when we talk about, mentors for young women and the capacity that women can have and the added value that they bring to the world, Sharon, personifies that. She joined the Zonte Club of Santa Clarita Valley in 1979, and she served in many leadership positions for Zonte International. Sharon, over to you. The Global Programme is so proud that Zonte International is our only private sector and women-led investor. Through you, we have been able to show positive results that can be achieved by women, for women, and girls. Throughout the world, Zonte is not only financing efforts to end child marriage, but is a keen advocate for the issue as well. As you look ahead to your 65th convention, and we acknowledge the challenges that we live in, how will Zonte maintain its leadership in leveraging the power of women and their network to address child marriage? Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Nankali. Yes, 3 years ago, when Zonte International began our support for the global program, our hope was that our Zonte clubs across our 63 countries would take up the issue at the national and local levels. Like any new initiative, it took us some time to get it off the ground. But today, we are proud to see a variety of actions to end child marriage across the Zonte world. And the global program aligns with our focus on education. We know that when the girl stays in school, that we are helping to prevent that child marriage. And Zonte clearly has a focus on education for women and girls. And we're very proud to be a supporter of the global program. As we look ahead at our 65th Zonte International Convention next June, we will encourage our global network of clubs to build upon their existing efforts and maintain momentum to ensure that every girl has the opportunity to go to school, realize her full potential, to decide if and when, who to marry. We want the girl to have a choice. We will not settle for less.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sharon. Colleagues, I'm inviting you again, please, to reach out and put out any questions that you have in the panel, any clarifications that you'd like to have. Please feel free to put those out there and we can ask the donors as we go forward. Mary Thomas, I see a question for you. Would you like to state it yourself?
Sure, Nankali. Thank you. Yeah, I just, can't agree more in terms of this whole insight of how women's rights organizations and feminist organizations are really equipped to be able to kind of drive normative programming, bring the interlinkages across a lot of gender issues. But often the issues also in terms of scale as well, in terms of their bandwidth to be able to kind of work with scale, also in terms of being able to work with the government. Just wanted to kind of get some insights of, how this has been done in different spaces, or any insights in terms of how we can work with women's rights organizations or feminist organizations in scale. Also coming in the fact that, when we talk about gender transformative programming, it takes time. It is also very, it's also requires a lot of resources and it has to be sustained. And that's the approach that often feminist organizations use. And often we sometimes don't have the patience for that as well, to be honest. So how do we kind of, address some of these challenges? Over.
Thank you so much, Mary. Kathleen, may I address that to you? The issue of time, the issue of long-term investment, etc. What do you think?
Sure.
Over to you.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on that. I mean, first of all, I would just say that, part of this is around the way that we fund women's rights organizations to allow sustainability over time. And that's been a real priority of some of our investments, including with Women's Voice and Leadership and with the Equality Fund. It is really about providing that unearmarked funding for women's rights organizations to work on the priorities that they want to work on. But it's also around, we've been very focused, I think, in our reinforcements during COVID around, supporting the sustainability of these organizations, both in terms of how we invested in Women's Voice and Leadership, but also we gave, additional funding to the UN Trust Fund to end violence against women for the same reason, that they were doing things to reinforce the sustainability and the capacity. What I've seen when I've been fortunate to go out into the field with the global program and meet with different organizations is when the national plans and when the committee, the sort of planning groups around those include civil society, this is how you create those kind of mechanisms to really bring them to the table and to create scale. I think also, Girls Not Brides and their national partnerships has been a really important mechanism. And if you look at the results that have been achieved by those national partnerships, you can really see in real change. And I think, Patricia pointed to some of that, which is like changes in laws, for example, and things. And those were like these women's organizations and some of the Girls Not Brides national partnerships that drove it. I think the other thing that one of the most striking things I saw too is just how powerful creating these national plans can be. And I do think we actually do need to harness more of that excitement around those. So when I was in Zambia, I know the Zambian government is focusing on 2 districts for their implementation. But after those programs, I met with civil society, and what really struck me is they were working in different districts, but they were driven by the national plan. They were as committed as those government partners. And so these national plans have an opportunity to mobilize action across the country in spaces where the global program maybe can't reach. I mean, there are limited resources, but when you have a really powerful national plan, when you create the mechanism within those national plans for a multi-stakeholder table, the impact can be quite significant in terms of change that's happening across the country.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Let me move on to Mike. Mike is presently based in Cotonou, Benin, at the Netherlands Embassy. From 1981 until 2012, she worked in the area of education and development. I think many of you have seen her in the different working groups during the course of this meeting. She's a great supporter of us, and we're really glad to have her join us as well today. Mike, the Netherlands has been supporting initiatives to fight child marriage for a number of years. Could you explain to us why this topic is such a priority for the Netherlands government? And can you tell us whether this will remain a priority in the coming years? Over to you, Mike.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nankali. And also thank you for having organized this global online meeting. There's been a lot of exchange and, well, at least from my part, from my side, also a lot of learning. I'm probably going to repeat what others have said, but never mind. Let me concentrate on our Netherlands policy. As Nankali indicated, I'm working in Benin at the Netherlands Embassy there, but I'm still involved and continue to be involved in helping out our support to initiatives that support the eradication of child marriage. Let me explain why the Netherlands government has chosen to continue to support the efforts to eliminate child marriage. Like many other countries, our foreign affairs policy, we have given special attention to the prevention of child marriage. The phenomenon is, as you all know, a severe violation of human rights. And respect for human rights is a principle underpinning our general foreign policy. Child marriage, as you all know, is also a manifestation of gender inequality. In fact, this is the most important root cause of child marriage, I would think. And fighting gender inequality is another major principle of our development cooperation and foreign affairs policy. Another driver, an important driver for child marriage is poverty. And we all know that preventing child marriage will bring economic growth to communities. As you know, when children can continue their education, especially girls, they will be able to pursue their dreams. They will be able to choose a career and participate meaningfully in the economy. They'll be able to make healthy choices regarding their sexuality and will be in a better position to choose if, when, with whom and how many children they would like to have. Obviously, the education needs to be of good quality, and age-appropriate comprehensive sexuality education using a gender transformative approach should be part of the curriculum. Well, what I've said now I think that illustrates that prevention of child marriage is perfectly in line with our human rights-based development cooperation policy, which obviously has a focus also on poverty alleviation and promotion of gender equality. Maybe just quickly say something about what we have been doing concretely in the prevention of child marriage initiatives. We have supported the global program since 2016, I think, or 2015, when we signed the multi-annual agreement with UNICEF to support the first phase, and we have continued to supporting the second phase. Also, in 2016, we started a program that cooperates with Dutch NGOs that work on the prevention of child marriage in our SRHR, Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights Partnership Fund. We also started funding the work of Girls Not Brides. And apart from that, from the centrally funded support, we have Dutch embassies in a number of countries. For example, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Mozambique, and not surprisingly, Benin. We have also supported through bilateral funding different initiatives in those countries. And of course, last but not least, our permanent representatives within the different UN organizations, they participate in global dialogue and use diplomacy to support initiatives that focus on defending human rights and eradicate child marriage, for example, in the Human Rights Council, etc. Why do we take this approach? Child marriage is a complex phenomenon. I'm not telling you anything new. That means that in order to eradicate child marriage, a multi-actor and a multi-level approach is crucial. So by supporting NGO alliances, we support work at grassroots level through the CSO and NGOs in different countries. And these locally based organizations work with young people, with schools, with parents, teachers, traditional leaders, religious leaders, health workers, etc., local authorities also. Working at grassroots level is crucial since eradicating child marriage requires changes in behavior, in beliefs and cultural traditions. So this grassroots level experience can be channeled through the NGOs to embassies and UN organizations. So in this way, evidence-based information finds its way up to governments and high-level policymakers, thus enriching, we think, the high-level dialogue with facts from the ground. Also, working with Girls Not Brides means support for capacity building of many hundreds of NGOs and CSO in target countries. It helps gathering evidence and engaging in evidence-based research, in publishing research, and in establishing a worldwide movement against child marriage. And as you know, Girls Not Brides as an organization is also very strong in high-level political engagement. By supporting UN organizations, as well as through our embassies, we seek cooperation with national governments in the countries where we operate. Both embassies and UN organizations have very short communication lines with political leaders and members of government. They contribute to a coordinated approach involving governments, donors, civil society organizations, religious and traditional leaders, and national and international NGOs. And also in negotiations about the resolutions, like in UN fora, like also the Human Rights Council, the Netherlands representatives, they advocate for including measures to prevent child marriage, as well as supporting girls that are already married. Now, a question that keeps us thinking, especially in these days, what about the future? Well, we can say that the Netherlands has contributed to the prevention of child marriage and has tried to support a multi-level and multi-actor approach for a number of years, but we are not ready yet. So we will need to continue to do so because there are still many children, mainly girls, getting married before the age of 18. We also know that COVID-19 has had a negative effect on the results of the program and calls for changes in strategies maybe. So I think we need to continue our work, and we need to intensify support so that young people, especially girls, may have possible future perspectives which will be beneficial for all. However, I'm here in Benin. In the Netherlands, they have been trying to form a new government for over 7 months now. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, whether that means that our support cannot be guaranteed because, well, that's the government that will decide. But I dare to say that I have good hopes that the basic principles of our foreign policy will not change. And hence, I don't see any political reasons not to continue. And the civil servants are ready to continue supporting you. And well, we hope for the best, but as I said, I am confident that we will continue working in this very important area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You know, to colleagues and other participants, we're really fortunate within the context of the global program that the donors that we have are personal. You can see that it's coming from their heart. They're personal champions. They believe in it and they're strong advocates for us. And Mika is clearly one of them and has been since the beginning. And we're very grateful for that and really look forward to the continued support. Next question goes to Norway. Hilde, and Hilde, I'm not clear how to pronounce your last name. You must educate me today. How do I pronounce your last name?
Well, in Norwegian we say Røren, but I'm happy with anything. It's
Thank you very much. So Hilde is the senior advisor at the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, working in the section for gender equality. At NORAD, she's managing the portfolio on child marriage and mainly focused on the UNFPA-UNICEF Global Programme to end child marriage and a multi-country framework agreement with Plan Norway. Hilde, in 2019, Norway launched its first international strategy to eliminate harmful practices, which is going to last from 2019 to 2023. Can you share what results you've achieved to date and what the policy and whether the policy will be extended to 2030 to make a contribution to the elimination agenda? Over to you, Hilde.
Thank you, Nankali. I think first of all, I'd like to thank you for being here and also congratulate everyone, the organizer and the moderator and all the contributors to this meeting. I think it's been really good, I would say. We've been to some fair share of digital meetings now, and I think this is the best one I've attended, the best organized. You managed to combine it with interactive sort of participation. And I also think that other people have mentioned that at least the sessions I joined, they really seemed to take the agenda a bit forward. It wasn't just repeating the usual things we always hear. So I think it's been really good. And I also like to emphasize that as a donor, Norway is very committed to this work. And we definitely see ourselves as a partner, not just a donor in a way. So we're very happy for this, being part of this work. So as you said, it's actually now 2 years since the strategy was launched. I even have a paper copy, which is very old-fashioned, I know, but and I won't go sort of deep into the details of the strategy because it's available online in English as well for those who really want to read all the details. But I think, as you mentioned, it runs from 2019 to 2023, and Norway committed 10.4 Norwegian billion in sexual and reproductive health and rights in the period from the 2020 to 2025. And within that, 760 million Norwegian kroners is earmarked for harmful practices in the period of 2020 to 2023. And just briefly, the strategy focused on targeted efforts and programs, as well as integrated approach across the other areas of Norwegian support. And for targeted approaches, we have spent a fair bit of that support goes to supporting the global program on child marriage, as we talked about here, and also the program on the elimination of female genital mutilation. And we also, of course, support civil society organization. Among the ones with the bigger agreements on this is Plan International. And just as almost a fun fact around that, because in Norway, annually we have a telethon, which is nationally. And every year they pick one topic that the funds will go to. And this year it goes to Plan's work for ending child marriage. So on Sunday, every door in Norway will get a knock, and there will be someone there saying, "Would you all like to support the work against child marriage?" So it's very much in the news these days, this area. So that was a bit of a sidetrack. And also, in addition to these targeted approaches, the strategy highlights the importance of strengthening efforts to combat harmful practices within all the prioritized areas, including in education, in health, and here a big here big focus is on integrating comprehensive sexuality education, women's rights and gender equality and human rights in general. All of this should include the focus on harmful practices. And also the strategy, quite importantly, highlights the importance of maintaining a high level of core funding to organizations who contributes to work to eliminate harmful practices, among them UNFPA, UNICEF, World Health Organization, at least to name a few, which we think also it's quite important to give that space to focus. And when it comes to, you ask also what we achieved so far, that's obviously in one way, your achievements is our achievements, because the work is through our partners. But when it comes to the financial commitments, we are on track. So obviously the funds were committed and they are coming in and we are on track. And also when it comes to more sort of on the context and the achievements we actually have also now a bit later after 2029, we now also have a result framework, and we will conduct a midterm, and there will be a midterm report in 2022 that will look more maybe into what we achieved and potential gaps. And I think also one thing I forgot to mention, I said the focus areas of strategy. I think also research is taking quite a big part or a central role in the strategy in the way, and we're supporting obviously through you the CRANK, which is a really important initiative. And I think also here in this discussion, some issues are coming up that we need to also be sort of tough enough to ask the difficult questions. Is there anything that's not working, and actually being open to have those discussions and make adjustments is also important for us. And of course, as I mentioned, Norway is very much a proud supporter, and we have the funds committed to 2023, but also as has been touched upon before, the extensions of this, it's on a very high political level, decisions are made. And so it's the specificity, oh, I'm just skipping that word, is not quite decided yet. But Norway, we got a new government last week. And contrary to Netherlands, it seems to be closer to actually happening in practice. And two parties have joined now in a coalition. And these two ruling parties had negotiation and came up with a government platform, which is not detailed, but it sort of outlines the policies and their politics. And I'm going to actually read from there, because it's so I don't get the wording wrong and get pulled off. So it says, in the international development politics, they list 6 priorities. And one of those priorities is women's right to control their own bodies. And the specific text is that the government will strengthen Norwegian contribution, establish new alliances, and increase support for family planning, contraceptives, and safe abortion. So I think we could say it's looking positive that we will. I know obviously Norway has always, for a long time, supported gender equality. So I think we are positive that we will find ways to continue our important work.
Excellent, excellent. Hilda, we've been watching the news and looking at the new government coming in and feeling a bit nervous about what this means. So it's really great to hear that it's looking positive, and we're really looking forward to hearing more and looking forward to the continued implementation of the harmful practices policy. Congratulations again, to the Norwegian government for putting that in place.
We'll let you know as soon as we hear anything more about new policies or government plans.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay. On to Ali. Ali, how are you today?
Very well, thank you, Nankali. It's great to be joining you.
Brilliant. Ali Hendy is the Child Protection and Child Marriage Lead at the United Kingdom's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. She works closely with donors and partners in phase 1 of the global program. She's passionate about gender equality and has previously led on FCDO's work in support to women's rights organizations and women's movement, a key theme that's coming out within the context of this particular session. Ali, congratulations to the UK for raising a record of $4 billion from donors for the Global Partnership for Education, which includes the UK's pledge of £430 million. How do you see this pledge making a contribution to elimination of child marriage, and what do you see as the key links between these UK priority agendas. Over to you, Ali.
Thanks so much, Nankali. And just to say, it's been really energizing to hear the interventions that other colleagues have made on the panel, and particularly positive to hear the focus and plans that colleagues have for supporting women's rights organisations. As I said in the chat bar, the UK is committed to working with women's rights organisations to tackle the inequality, discrimination and violence that hold women back. And in particular, look forward to working with Canadian colleagues and others through the newly established Global Alliance for Sustainable Feminist Movements, which we joined this year. And thank you to you, Nankali, and everyone else behind the scenes on these 3 days. There's some really positive feedback in the chat bar, and I know this represents the work. So on to the question. I mean, the Global Education Summit was an extraordinary moment of global solidarity in prioritising education for the world's most vulnerable children, and which, as you've set out, raised over $4 billion in donor pledges. And in addition, 19 Global Partnership for Education partner countries endorsed the Kenyatta Declaration, committing up to $196 billion in education financing over the next 5 years. And so those generous and ambitious pledges are critical to achieving 12 years of quality education for every girl. And in the UK, this is a top priority commitment for us. It's one of the Prime Minister's manifesto commitments, and includes global targets that were endorsed by the G7 to get 40 million more girls in school and 20 million more girls reading by age 10 in 2026. So, I mean, what I want to say today is that investments to support girls to attend and remain in school are also investments to prevent child marriage. So, as many on the call will be aware, we know that education and child marriage have a two-way relationship. Education can act as a protective factor, delaying marriage for girls, while child marriage continues to be a key driver in school dropout. And in fact, decisions about marriage timing and schooling are often jointly determined. So to illustrate that, if every girl completed secondary education, rates of child marriage would fall by 2/3. And equally, girls with 12 years of a quality education marry later and have fewer children who are also healthy. And we know as well that child brides are more likely to end their education and complete fewer years than their peers who marry later, and are also more exposed to disproportionate levels of violence, which impacts on their ability to still. So making progress on ending child marriage remains a crucial pillar of our work to champion 12 years of education. And we know that in addition to girls learning, holistic approaches are required to transform girls' lives. And that's why the UK has supported the UN Global Programme with funding over phase 1. And we've invested in a range of programs to enable girls to take back control and choice over their bodies and futures, including girls' access to a wider range of SRHR, poverty alleviation, child protection, and GBV services that can support delay of marriage and support girls to stay in school. And finally, recognising, as I said, that child brides face heightened risks of violence, the UK is also proud to be a global leader on preventing violence against women and girls. We're investing in expanding the global evidence base on what works to prevent VOG, including linkages to violence against children, and conducting rigorous evaluations to support the scale up of proven interventions. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Ali. Really appreciate that. I'd like to actually ask you, if you don't mind, I saw you replying back in the chat box to Mary's question around feminist organizations and the challenge about bandwidth to go to scale. Would you like just to share a bit more about what you posted in the chat box, Ali?
Of course, I could talk about this for days. I'm sure many other people on the call could. It's something that is really important. So just to say, I mean, I think I agree with everything that Kathleen, set out in terms of the critical importance of funding that is core, flexible, and long-term. It's also really important that, I mean, we consulted with women's rights organisations, funds, and networks last year, It's quite interesting. Something that came out of that consultation was requesting of donors not to reinvent the wheel. So considering where there are existing, credible specialist intermediaries, and really thinking about how we can simplify application processes and ensure that calls for bids are not creating additional work or causing issues in terms of capacity. And then just to build on that, there's also an important issue about ensuring that the representatives of women's movements and women's rights organisations are able to be in the room, in national and international fora when key decisions are being made. And through our G7 presidency, we partners endorsed a call for women's rights organisations to be better included and actively engaged in decisions around the COVID-19 response. And better consulted through those processes. And finally, I think that there is a point that there's a role for governments to play in protecting civic space for those organisations to continue to operate. And we know that that's a really important part of basically making sure that women's rights organisations can continue to do the critical job that they do. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ali. Ifeni, are you there? I see you advocating in the chat box, and I'd like to give you space to speak up now about the youth and the importance of investment in young people.
Yes, yes, I'm absolutely here. Thank you so much, Nankali. I would like to say that this is a very, very important discussion going on, and we, the youths, have identified the importance of donations because it actually helps our work amplified. I also asked the question how we can, cut the problem of reach and accessibility, because so many youth activists and so many youth organizations that have been funding themselves have been trying to reach out to global donors, but it's also a problem. So we hope that, there are means that can be made to, bridge this gap where like an artificial intelligence system can monitor youth that are actually working on the ground and probably reach out to them, to fund them. And that is why also these youth activists should be included in any planning. And also we would like to say that it is a very, very important thing for donors to know that we are grateful and we wish that this global program is also amplified in ways that it will also include it will also include ensuring that there are continuous awards and summits organized to encourage youths that are working tirelessly with their own voluntary activism to make sure that these stuff are done at the grassroots level. So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm glad to see the results of all these consultations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. To all our partners, Ifeni is our self-appointed young person that works with the global program and always has something to be able to say and to contribute towards, where we should be investing and how we should continue to support young people. Mickey, I'm checking to see if you're there. You're constantly following up on us on the importance of supporting on youth-led organizations, and I'd love to know if you have anything to say in response to Ifeni and in general about, the importance of supporting young people in youth-led organizations. Over to you, Mickey.
Thank you, Nankali. And actually, when you were asking me the question, I was checking on my computer to find the name of our youth ambassador. Our Ministry of Foreign Affairs has an SRHR youth ambassador. And what we try to do is that, she is also participating in the high-level discussions and things like that. So I'm going to continue checking maybe Lieselot. Look, Lieselot is already responding in the chat. And we think that because we talk a lot about involving youth, but it's always old people like me who are sitting and talking with the global program and etc. So, and within our country, within the countries where we work, I can mention the experience in Benin where I'm working. We really involve youth when we have meetings or whatever, we just say, okay, now let's not talk about youth, but let them talk about themselves. So we're doing our best, but well, I must admit, the most important policymakers are still old people. But we have to do everything in our power to try and change that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miki. I really appreciate. We're almost out of time, and I just want to ensure that all our partners can have one final, very quick word. Kathleen, I saw you typing in the chat box. Do you want to say anything really quickly as your final word?
Just to say, I mean, I really appreciate Ifeanyi's intervention. I think it's an area where we have work to do. I think there's been a real change in terms of commitment, I think, around voice and participation. But I also think not just for youth-led organizations, but for a lot of grassroots organizations, it's very challenging to access funding or to figure out how to build those systematic relationships. The one thing I would say, and I think it's great Miki spoke about her experience in Benin, is that like a lot of this is at the country level. And so some of this is how we work with our missions abroad to support them. But I know that there's a strong commitment, and it's great to have young voices constantly challenging us, you know, to do better and to think about this more. So I just wanted to give a note of appreciation for that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Hilde, any final word from you?
Oh, there's been so many good and wise words now, so I'm not sure how much more I have to add, but I actually was also thinking about is that it's so good to be challenged by organizations, because it easy to get sort of stuck in the same routine or doing the same as you've done before. So we really do appreciate being challenged and hearing the different perspectives. So just continue doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hilde. Sharon, final word from you?
It's just encouraging to see everything, and we're so glad to be a partner, to be able to give, to support the program, and seeing that focus on education and the choice for girls. It's so important that we have that opportunity to give the girls choices and feel that they have control over their future.
Thank you so much. Patricia, finally from you.
Yes, well, first of all, I just wanted also to mention that to answer the questions on youth, that the European Commission is, I mean, it's one of our commissioner priority. Youth is getting more and more important in terms of, I mean, in terms of mainstreaming in our programming. Our commissioner has just appointed a special advisor on youth, and we have set up also what we call the youth sounding boards, which means that all our programs will be youth approved by a committee of young people who have been designated. So I fully agree with Miki. We should stop now to say that we want to work for youth people or children. We need also to involve them fully in the programming and to hear them, to hear their voice. And I just also wanted to reply to a question which was in the chat box. For me, it concerns the partnership. The partnership is at many levels for us, and when I said partnership, it's not only partnership between stakeholders, but it's also partnership between civil society organizations. At the EU, we have the policy to always partner with when an EU organization applies to one of our call for proposals, we impose this organization to partner with a local CSO. And it's very important, of course, to have for us the aspect of the grassroots at the grassroots level. But the partnership is also with the governments when we have the political dialogues, and it's also with the other initiatives. And I'm thinking specifically about the African Union's initiatives. So a mechanism of partnership, I wouldn't say a single mechanism, but we have many mechanisms at all levels.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you so much to all our donors who've been on this panel. We've even gone 1 minute over time, but I think it's been worth it. It's been great to be able to hear your policy positions, to hear your continued commitment to youth-led organizations. Ifeanyi, don't worry about that. To women-led organizations, and towards achieving the elimination goal. It's been great to have you here. We're now moving on to the closing session.